Good afternoon, Year 9. I hope you had a nice weekend. We're going to be talking today about multiplying and dividing algebraic expressions and how we simplify that. So we need to go through a few things, and so let's make sure that we listen carefully and go through them. So when multiplying algebraic terms, we don't need to use a multiplication sign. Okay, so we can drop that. So something like 5 times x times y. We no longer have to write it like that. We just write it as 5xy. That's just the assumption. We just assume that there's a multiplication sign between them. They multiply together. Now, when combining terms with multiplication, they don't have to be like terms. Remember, we talked about last lesson with like terms, how you have to use like terms if you want to add and subtract in algebra, but we don't have to do that. So you can multiply an x and a y together, you can multiply a and b, and all you have to write is a times b multiplied together is ab. And that's the way that we do that. Now, when you multiply the same variable together, the power increases, or the index. So x times x, we've got 2 x's multiplied together, is x squared. Okay, so 2x squared times x cubed, we have x squared. We have x cubed, and so we get 2x to the power of 5. That increases the number of variables, increases the power that you have on the variable. And if you think about it, x squared is x times x cubed is x times x times x. So when you have x times x, and 3x's, x times x times x, you have 5, which is x to the power of 5. When dividing, we need to use a fraction sign rather than a division sign, because it's actually clearer to see how we're going to simplify. So we'll write division as 2xy over 4y squared, rather than as 2xy divided by 4y squared. So if you're given a question in this form, it's always helpful. The first step, you should change it to this, and you'll be able to see what terms you can cancel out and what common factors, because when you're dividing algebraic terms, the goal is to simplify by cancelling out common factors. So a common factor, remember, is a number that divides both of the terms. So for example, 2 is a common factor of 8 and 10. So we can divide both of those by 2. And in fact, it's the highest common factor. Or 3 is a common factor of 9 and 15. So we need to make sure that we're finding what common factors are and cancelling them out. So again, the best way to do this is to go ahead and have a go, and so we're going to have a look. So let's have a look at a few examples here. So the first one is 8ab times 2b. Now if I wanted to rewrite this, I could rewrite it in a few ways, but what you get is 8, I'll put in the 8 times a times b times 2 times b. Now, of course, you don't have to always write it like this, but that's just to show what this actually means. 8ab times 2b is 8 times a times b times 2 times b. So what we can see is, if I rearrange this, it could be helpful. So I get 8 times 2 times a times b times b. And the thing about multiplication is, it doesn't matter what order you do it in. I can rearrange it in any order and I'm going to get the same number. And so what we get here is 8 times 2, well, we know that that's 16. And so if I go equals, that's 16. A by itself is just a, so that stays the same. And then b times b, well, that's b squared. And so that's going to be 16a b squared, is what we end up with. So if you take it step by step, break it down, rearrange it, and then put it back together, you see that we get 16ab squared. So that's our first one. b times b is b squared. If I have a look at our next one, again I can rearrange it or expand it out if that's helpful and write it in a rearranged form. Now if all this is tedious, you can always just take shortcuts and do it quicker, but it's always a good idea while we're getting used to it to do this way. So we get minus 6 times x times 4 times a times b. Alright, that equals 2. I can rearrange this. It's going to be minus 6 times 4 times a times b times x. Right. So that's good. We've got that so far. Now if I have a look, well, minus 6 times 24, that's a negative times a positive. A negative times a positive is going to be a negative. And then we have 6 times 4 is 24. So the answer is going to be, for that part, minus 24. And then I have just 3 different pronumerals. I have all the variables. A, I have b, and I have x. And I can't combine them with any powers or anything, so I simply get minus 24 a, b, x. That's what I end up with. Over. So minus 24 a, b, x. So I've expanded it out. I can rearrange it, put the numbers together, put the pronumerals together, and then I write it in the simplest form, which is this one. So that's multiplication, making sure we remember when you have a negative times a positive, it's going to be negative. Negative times a negative is a positive. Positive times a positive is a positive as well. Now we come to a couple of division problems. So if we have a look here, we've got a cubed divided by 2a squared. So remember what I said earlier, it's much easier if we have the top over the bottom, write it as a fraction. So what I'm going to do is actually do that. So we've got a times a times a over 2 times 2 times a, which is what a squared is. So a squared is a times a cubed is a times a. Now if you see here, what's going to happen is that we have common factors. When you divide a, this number here, when you divide it by itself, you're just going to get 1. So these actually just cancel out. Same here, when you have this a, you have this a. When you divide a by a, you just get 1, so they cancel out. You're left with just this 1, which you don't have to write. What we're left with here is a over 2. And that's what we're going to give as our answer. So we have equals. What we're left with is a over 2. So that's the next step. We're making sure we cancel out common factors, and then we write our solution. So we'll try that same thing for this one. So we've got 36x squared y cubed divided by minus 9y squared. Okay, so that's a bit of a mouthful, but we'll see how we go. So we're going to rewrite it first. So we get 36x squared y cubed over minus 9y squared. Okay, so that's our first step. Now I can write it expanding out. So I'm going to expand out these powers. I'm going to say, okay, this is x times x instead of x squared, and then y times y instead of y cubed, etc. So what we're going to end up with is 36 times x times y times y, which is y cubed, over minus 9 brackets minus 9 times y, which is y squared. That's what we end up with. I've expanded this out and just written it like that. So the first thing I can do is get rid of any common factors I see now. Well, obviously y and y are common factors. So y divided by y is 1, so that goes. This also goes because y divided by y. And so at the moment we have 36 x xy, so x squared y, over minus 9. But we need to notice another thing here. So 36 and 9 have a common factor. So if I rewrite this, I can write it as equals 4 times 9 times x times x times y over minus 9. And so if we do that, what do we see? Well, we see that 36 is 4 times 9, so 9 is actually a common factor. So what happens is the 9s are going to cancel. So I get the 9, that cancels out, that cancels out. And what we're left with is actually minus 1. So I can take the step and jump to the end and say, well, what we end up with is minus 1 here. I'm just going to take that negative sign and take it to the top. And so our answer is going to be minus 4 x squared y. Because when you divide something by minus 1, it changes the sign. So we end up with minus 4 x squared y. This is our answer that we end up with. Okay, so a few steps, but if you take it step by step, it's much more clear and you see what you need to cancel out. Final thing, final example I'll do, so they're all changing to number ones, but yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth one, down, so it's 2. So the final step is, or the final example, sorry, you've got 3ab times 2a squared divided by 6b squared a squared. Now the thing about these ones, if there's multiple operations, make sure you just take it step by step. Yeah, that's the best thing that you can do. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And so I'll first do this one. So I'll write it all out in expanded form and see how we go. So first I'm going to ignore this bit. I'm just going to keep this the same at the end. I'm then going to write this part expanded. Okay? So we'll go ahead and do that. And so we get 3 times a 3 times a times b times 2 times a times a. And then we need to put in divided by this. I'm going to just leave that for a moment. Now, if I take a bit of a shortcut, I can see that 3 times 2 is 6. Okay? So I'm going to just write that 6. A times A is A cubed. A cubed. And then we have 1b, which is just going to stay the same as b. And then we have divided by 6b squared a squared. We're starting to see that it's going to simplify, and we'll be able to do some nice simplifying with the division just now. Okay, so equals. So now if I write it as a fraction, that's the first thing that I can do. And I'll write it out expanded as well. So we'll do 6 times a times a times a times b over 6 times b times b times a. Now if we have a look carefully, we're going to see what's going to cancel out. So if we see here, we have, well, the 6 divided by the 6, that cancels. And then if I have a b here, well, a b, that cancels with a b. So a, and a divided by a, and then I have another a divided by a, that's 1. All I'm left with now is this b in the denominator, I'm left with this a in the numerator. And so my answer is going to be, everything simplifies, and I just end up with a over b. So that's what my solution is. Taking note that once you expand it out, take it step by step, work carefully, you'll be able to see which factors are common, and so you cancel them out. The questions I'd like you to work on: exercise 2.04, 1, 2, 4, and 5, do the first column of the question, so the left-hand column, then questions 6 and 7 do all. Alright, so working on that, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.